Are you ready for an afternoon of teaching? Huh? Can you, I mean, you've been super. Can you hang with me for 4 sessions, probably about 25 to 30 minutes in length? Are we good? All right. And if the person beside you seems to be kind of, out of it, just smack them. Okay? There you are. See, that's already happening. Boy, smacking's already begun. In fact, you were waiting for this time, weren't you? Okay? So what I'll do is I'll teach each session, and then we'll take a 2-minute break. Not for you to leave, but what I'll do is in that 2-minute break, I'm going to ask you to share with somebody what's the most important thing that you learned. So it's going to, and if it's okay, I'm going to ride straight through. Okay? So we're going to do 4 sessions just straight through. Remember, you can only do that if you have high energy and low IQ. Okay, so it's that I'm in that perfect. But one more. Have you enjoyed the day? Have you enjoyed the? It's been good, hasn't it? Huh? I think it's been solid. I think it's been very, very strong. So I'm very pleased. Okay, let's rock and roll. It's a joy for me to talk about Change Your World, and to take each chapter now and kind of open it up to you. And this will be just like a little surface summary of each chapter, so you kind of have an idea of why I teach what I teach and basically how we apply it to our lives. So let's get started. I'm very excited to be teaching you, and we're going to start with chapter 1, and the chapter title is We Can't Wait for Change. And there's a quote that is just, to me, the anchor for this chapter, and it's the beginning quote by Augustine of Hippo. And here's what he said, and this is what I don't want you to miss. Hope has 2 beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. That's a tremendous, tremendous quote. That hope has 2 daughters, and one is anger, and one is courage. Now, let me just talk about both those emotions just for a moment, because what we know is normally the first emotion we feel before we take action is a negative emotion, anger. We're upset by the world's conditions and what we see around us, and we're asking questions, why is it this way, and why is not somebody doing something about it? But what I've learned about negative emotions is they are a great impetus to get us moving, but you can't live off of anger and negative emotions for a long time and do positive good. So it's a catalyst to get us to move, but it's not sufficient to have a movement. Don't miss the difference. A movement has to be sustained. And for a movement to be sustained, there has to be hope. There has to be positivity in that movement. People don't stay with the negative for a long period of time. They maybe initiate the movement out of anger, but they can't stay there. They have to then go into a positive motion of courage itself. And so as we go through this book and as we go through the chapters, understand there's always a part of anger and there's always a part of courage, and they have to really mesh together for a person to sustain movement in their own personal life, okay? In the beginning of the book, in this chapter, I talk about who this book is for. I've never done this before, but I just kind of on the front end, I qualify who needs to read the book. It's kind of like you may not want to read after page 1, because this book isn't written for everybody. This book is written for somebody who really does want to make a positive difference. And so I write in the book, in the first couple pages, that this book is written for you if you want to change yourself. And it starts with transformation begins in me. What I've discovered about a lot of people is they want to change others, but they don't want to change themselves. And transformation, it all begins with the fact that I want to have personal change myself. Now, if I want to change myself, and then if I want to change those around me, my world, And if I would like to be part of a movement, a group of people that are really wanting to make a difference, then the book is for that person. Chapter 1 is about hope. And I talk about some very negative stats in the beginning just to help everybody understand that our world is not what we want our world to be. I give stats such as in 2014, 2.5 million children experienced homelessness just in the United States. And that civic engagement, volunteerism for the last 50 years has kind of steadily declined. 3.3 million people are victims of violent crime, just in the United States alone. That we literally lose in our global economy $13.6 trillion because of violence, that mental health is on the rise. Corruption, of course, is also. 40 million people in this world are victims of modern slavery. And then Lao Tzu, who is the Chinese kind of philosopher, said, if we don't change the direction we are headed, we are likely to end up where we're going. And that's just very true. We got to have it. We've got to stop. And so in the book, I talk about the fact that as I've gotten older, I have less certainties today than I did when I was younger. When I was young, I was certain about a lot of things. And if you came and asked me questions, I was certain that I could give you answers. But as I've gotten older, my certainties have become much less. If I had, as a young person, 500 certainties, I have maybe 15 now. Don't have a lot of certainties. But what's incredible about the certainties I still have today is they're stronger than they've ever been before. You see, they've been tested. Experience has allowed those certainties to either be validated, or it's allowed those certainties to kind of, like a wisp of smoke after a while, just kind of disappear. And the reason that I'm so passionate about change your world is I am certain about what I'm about to say to you. And you'll hear me say it probably as I go through this book, you'll hear me say it a half a dozen times, that this is what I'm certain about, and that is transformation is possible. That it's possible in your life, it's possible in my life, it's possible in the life of our friends, our family, it's possible in our life of our community, it's possible for our country. And the thesis of transformation is this: transformation is possible for anyone that is willing to live and learn good values. Now let's just stop here for a moment. It's possible for anyone that's willing to learn and live good values. Knowing that good values are not enough, we have to apply them to our life. And the reason that I'm so certain about transformation being possible is because we now have well over 1 million people that have proven this to be true. We have people that have gone through our transformation tables and embraced our values, and they would be the very first to say, this has literally changed my life. I learned these good values and I live them. So the first part of knowing for sure that what I'm saying really works is the fact that I've watched it work in the lives of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. But then the second part is so essential. It's not only important for me to learn and live good values, but it's also essential for me to value everyone. And that's why in our thesis statement, these 3 words were chosen very carefully by a group of my best people, spending a couple of days together on Change Your World and just being as creative and as thoughtful as we could be. So don't miss these 3 words, okay? The transformation is possible for anyone willing to learn good values, live good values, and then here are these 3 words: value every person. Not some people, not most people, value every person. The motive of why we do things has got to be completely centered in the fact that we value people. There's a fine line in a leader's life between motivating people and manipulating people. And that fine line is that when I manipulate you, I move you for personal advantage. Manipulation is never right. There's never a time where a leader should manipulate people, because manipulation has always an end goal of serving me. I'm moving you, manipulating you to serve me. That's always wrong. Now, leaders have to move people, so motivation is a good word in the leader's life. But when we motivate people, we move people for mutual advantage. It's a win for you. In fact, here's what a leader always looks at and understands and studies. Don't miss this. The reason I lead is to add value to you. Leaders always go last. They always put the other people at the head of the line and first. So when I'm willing to learn good values and I'm willing to live them, I must also put that right up against the fact that I value people. Because if I don't value people, I won't stay in this transformational game. Then there's one other part of this incredible transformation thesis. I learn and live good values. I value every person. And the third part is I collaborate. I collaborate with others to create this positive change culture. In other words, it's not enough for me just to learn and live good values. It's not enough for me just to value others. Now I've got to collaborate, which means put concerted, intentional, extra effort with other people of like cause to make this happen, because it cannot happen just with one person. One's too small of a number to achieve greatness. So now now that we're here, I want us to take these three parts for a moment, and I want us to make sure that we have them. And so the way that we're going to have them is I'm going to share them with you, and then I'm going to have you really quickly just turn to your neighbor and say that, okay? First of all, before we go, just look at your neighbor and say, transformation is possible for you. Go ahead and tell them that, right? In fact, look at that person and says, why do you think I brought you here today? You know, I'm hoping this. Okay. Now, in the transformation thesis, there are three parts, okay? The first part is transformation only happens when I learn and live good values. So turn to your neighbor and say, you've got to learn and live good values. You tell them that right now. You got it. And transformation is only possible if you truly value people. So look at the person beside you. Say, I value you. Okay, now we're really getting good. And we have to work together. We have to collaborate. So look at your neighbor and say, let's do transformation together. Okay, tell them that, okay? Okay, now you've got it. Okay, learn and live good values, value people, do it together. You got that? If you'll remember those three elements, you've got the whole thesis, the real purpose of what transformation is. We're trying to help people learn and live good values, value people, and work together to produce this values culture. That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. In chapter 1, I make a couple statements that I think are essential to get us started in the right direction. And the first statement I make is that you have to have hope for yourself if you're going to have hope for others. And so I talk about the value of having hope for yourself. You hear me say often, you cannot give what you do not have. If I have hope for myself, I can be a dealer in hope for others. But if I lack hope for myself, it's not transferable to someone else. And in the book, I think what makes this first chapter really cook well is I talk about the difference between optimism and hope. Because optimism is a belief that things can get better. And we like optimistic people. I'm an optimist. But when you have optimism, you have a belief that things will get better. But with hope, you have faith that you can make things better. So one is passive, okay? It's almost a passive virtue, optimism. Well, I think things will get better, but you have no plan to make them better. You're not intentional in doing something about it. You just kind of have a positive viewpoint or a positive outlook. So optimism can be a very passive voice, where hope is an active voice. In hope, you say, you know what, I not only think can make things get better, I'm going to do something about it. You see, hope puts us in the picture. It doesn't allow us to be a fan, a bystander. It helps us get in the game. With optimism, I don't think optimism requires any courage or commitment. I think optimism, again, is a viewpoint, an outlook, and I don't think you have to be courageous to be an optimist, and I don't even think you have to be committed to be an optimist. But if you are a dealer in hope, you have to be courageous and you have to be committed. Again, it doesn't allow us to sit on the side. You see, optimism is a belief that you can change, but you haven't. But hope is a belief that you can change and you have. That's huge. So what we're going for in chapter 1 is to get you to be not a person of optimism, but a person of hope. When we think of change, there are 4 times that people change in their life. Now, every leader understands this because leaders are change agents. So leaders look for these 4 times when people are willing to change. Let me give them to you. People change when they hurt enough that they have to. In other words, they just get desperate. And all of a sudden they say, wow, I have got to change. I can't continue to live like this. They hurt enough that they have to. People change when they see enough that they're inspired to. A lot of times, people just need a picture of somebody that's doing what they would like to accomplish. You know, people do what people see. Leadership is highly visual. And all of a sudden, we have a eureka moment because what we wanted to accomplish or how we wanted to change, we see somebody else that did. And so that visualness, we change when we hurt enough we have to. That's kind of like we're backed in the corner. We really have very little choice. We see enough that we're inspired to. Thirdly, people change when they learn enough that they want to. One of the beautiful things about transformation that we've done in other countries is this learning enough that they want to. One of the things that got really excited about is when we put them around tables and they began to discuss values. We found that when they began to learn about these values, it began to change them. That it was a eureka moment. And so if you hurt enough, you have to, you're kind of in the corner, I have no choice. Well, you're inspired because you see someone else, okay, or you learn enough you want to. And fourth, that people change when they receive enough that they're able to. And what makes us so excited about Change Your World, not only the book, but all the resources that we have in the Change the World movement that we're getting ready to create, is that we're going to provide people the resources they need. Because I think one of our frustrations is that we're willing to do something, but we don't have the tools to do it. Or we don't have the right tools to do it. And the tools that we use are the values lessons and the small group transformation tables. The values lessons are all about learning, opening our eyes, helping us to be aware. The tables, that's all about interacting, and which causes action. Interaction creates action. And there is no transformation without action. You can't learn your way into transformation. You have to act, work, do, walk your way into transformation. So what's exciting is that all 4 of these criteria, when people change, are part of the transformational movement, because we don't have to, hurting enough you don't have to convince anybody that we've got a values deficit, we've got a problem. Everybody knows we've got a problem. So we're already in that hurt category, but now we need to be inspiring. We need to have a visual example of that, and that's where we're creating a movement. That's where we're asking people like you to not only read the book Change Your World, but to facilitate transformation tables in your community. You can do it with your family, you can do it with your friends, you can do it at work, but people need to see the example, because the moment they sit in a table, there's a dynamic of watching a person across the table share with something they're learning, and it's a contagious dynamic. So in the transformation movement we're creating, there's a hurt factor, there's an inspiration visual factor, there's a learning factor, because we're teaching these values, and there's a resource factor because we're putting in their hands things that they can do. But the key is, chapter 1 is all about you've got to take action. Here's okay. I'm going to say this twice so you can write it down. It's just a couplet poem, but it works. Dare to dream, but please do. For dreamers are many, but doers are few. Dare to dream, but please do. For dreamers are many, but doers are few. We're going after doers. And a doer understands hope and takes the active path and not the passive path of optimism. So we are going to literally be recruiting tens of thousands of doers, people who say, I'm going to get in the arena of action. So we want you to have hope for yourself and for others. And the second thing that chapter 1 deals with is we want you to change from good intentions to good actions. Because the success gap is the difference between I should and I did. And a lot of people live what I call an I should life, or I wish I would life. But they don't live a I did life. When I wrote the book, Put Your Dream to the Test, I gave 10 questions for the person to test their dream to see if it could become valid or not. And one of the first questions I ask is the ownership question: is the dream really your dream? Because if the dream's really your dream, there's a whole different response you'll have to it than if it's somebody else's dream that's not yours. You see, if you live an I should life, there's no ownership to it. When you live an I did life, it's pure ownership. And what we're wanting to do in chapter 1 is to move people from good intentions to good actions. Good intentions are the most overrated English phrase in our entire language. Good intentions has never done anything good for anybody at any time for any reason. So why are we so excited about good intentions? Good intentions doesn't change your life. Good intentions is good intentions is just good intentions. And it dies there unless good intentions becomes good actions. Chapter 1 is all about taking people who have good intentions and moving them across to the action line. You see, the smallest deed is greater than the biggest intention. So intentions don't do one thing for me. When people say, I think I would like to do that someday, that's as worthless as can be. Well, I think I'd like to be part of a transformational. Quit thinking you'd like to be part of a transformational community and become one. The people who change their world. Remember the title of this chapter? I can't wait for change to happen. The people who change their world are the people who want to change it and don't wait to change it. So we want to cross that line of action. So the question I have for all of us with chapter 1 is not do we want to see a better world? Not do we believe that the world could become better? That's not the question. In fact, if that's as far as you go in the question, to be honest with you, you don't need to read the rest of the chapters. We can just kind of say it's been nice and you can go your way. There's only one question. And the question is, are you willing to step across and act upon what you've always intended to do? By the way, when are we going to understand that when we procrastinate and say one of these days, can I tell you something? One of these days for most people becomes none of these days. When are we going to just be honest sometime and say, what, I just am not going to do it because I'm lazy? Wouldn't that be just refreshing for somebody to say, what, I'm not going to make that call. Good Lord, no. I said, no, I'm not going to. No. I just could live with that more than, well, yes, I'm going, yeah, of course. Yeah, one of these days. Yeah, one of these days. If you can't wait for change to happen, you can't wait for change to happen. What part of wait do we not understand? Chapter 1 says, go from good intentions to good actions. We've all heard, every one of us have heard, more times than probably we would like to admit, the starfish story. I mean, we all know it well. The old man's walking along the beach one day after a pretty heavy storm, and there are literally thousands of starfish on the beach. And he sees this kid in the distance, and the kid's doing it. He keeps bending over and then throwing. He gets there close enough, and he sees that this kid is picking a starfish up one at a time and throwing it back into the ocean. And of course, then the old man looks at him and says, hey, you know, kid, there are thousands of them here. You know, what kind of a difference do you think you're making? I mean, you're doing this one at a time. There are thousands up here on the beach. And the kid holds, of course, the starfish up, and he says, well, he said, it makes a difference for this one. And he throws it back in the water. I, in this chapter, decided to use the starfish story, not because it's not already well known, we all know it. I decided to use the starfish story because a good friend of mine and a good friend of many of yours, Tracy Morrow, and her husband, Casey, literally had their life changed because of that story. So, Tracy, are you here close? Where are you, lady? Give her a hand, would you? She's going to come up here. How you doing, lady?
I'm doing great. How are you, John?
You're one of my favorite people.
Oh,
there's a chair for you.
Thank you. You're one of my favorite people.
And I just love this story of you and Casey and the starfish. And so everybody knows the starfish story, but they don't know the Tracy starfish story. So what I want you to do is I want you to tell that story.
Okay.
And just kind of help us kind of go from, wow, what a wonderful story of in good intentions to cross that line to good action. So have at it, lady.
Well, thank you for letting me share it, because I feel like it's probably the most profound time in my life where I feel like I'm a person of faith too, so I would be remiss to leave that piece of it out. But the time where God really intersected with my life. I think from the time I was a kid, I wanted to make a difference. I probably thought that meant I was going to be a famous singer, and maybe one day I'd bump Marie, and me and Donnie, it would not be Donnie and Marie, it would be Donnie and Tracy.
There you go. So your whole goal was to replace Marie, huh?
Yes. Yeah. I wasn't a sister in that family, but I had big teeth.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I was just going to say, she does have the teeth. We don't know if you got the voice, but the teeth, you could
just the teeth.
Well, maybe we put you on mute, and you could be part of it, or it could be Donnie, Marie, and Tracy.
And Tracy, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, when I was 14, that was in the early 80s, and Ethiopia was coming onto the world stage with the famine that was happening. And I think that was so impactful for me to understand that there were children who needed a home and family and food and just love and care. And so I don't remember if I was awake or asleep, but I have a very clear vision of being 14 and holding a little brown baby and intuitively knowing that I would adopt from Ethiopia. I don't remember if I was awake or asleep.
Yeah.
But
but it was real.
It was real.
Real vital.
And I just tucked it away. I didn't brag about it. To me, I just thought, oh, there's a need. That's my call. That's my purpose. And so when I was 19 and I met my husband, Casey, that was a prerequisite. Like, do you think that you could do this? Because at that point, I just felt like it was supposed to be 2 boys. And so he said, absolutely. And I said, okay, great. Because I want to have a lot of babies if possible, biologically as well. Are you up for that too? I was a fun girl to date. I'm so lucky he's stayed with me.
Absolutely. He was giving you a standing ovation, wasn't he?
He's like, man, this ticket is getting higher and higher to marry this woman. And so at 19, 20, I got married. And I really do believe in the course of my life that a lot of growth, and that's kind of the way that God works in my life. He plants something in me something from the future. It's not really clear, but I know that that's something that is, I believe, my purpose and my passion.
Sure.
And so we had 4 babies in 5 years biologically. And when I was 35, I went out to lunch with a friend. And through the course of the conversation, all of a sudden, suddenly I felt like this is what the time is now. Of course, we had 4 kids by then. We were getting ready. We were youth pastors. We were getting ready to take our kids up to camp for the weekend. I came home from that lunch on a Thursday, and I said to Casey, my husband, I think the time is now. And he's like, what do you mean the time is now? The time is now. I think we're supposed to adopt. Well, we're leaving for camp. Let's talk about it later. So through the course of the weekend, I could not. No way. It is full front on my mind. And so we talked about it all weekend. We were terrible youth pastors that weekend.
I bet you were.
Because all we talked about was, were we going to adopt now? And we came home on Sunday and on Monday. So from Thursday to Monday, we signed our first papers to begin the adoption process. And so, of course, we start learning, taking classes. Even though we're parents of 4 kids, we start taking classes about adoption and what that means for the child who's coming into our family. And then that's when I started learning, like Ethiopia at that time, depending on where you got your source from, 4.5 million to 6 million orphans in Ethiopia. And when you start to do something important that you're passionate about and deeply connected, for me, I don't know if it happens for you or anybody else, but just opposition comes.
Sure.
It might be a thought, it might be something somebody else said, it might be a fact or a statistic like 6 million orphans. Yeah. And that's when Casey and I it's like we lost our whole focus and purpose. It like punched us in the face, and we thought, well, should we be adopting 5 kids? Should we be adopting 10 kids? And then we're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we even making a difference? So it went from the call of my life and my heart to the logistics of why are you even doing this? How can you even do this? You should be doing more. You're not doing enough. You'll never be able to do enough. And someone from our, I believe it was our church, shared with us the starfish story. And that impacted me so greatly. It came at the perfect time, because for the first time I feel like God just brought me right back to, like, your business is not the outcome. Your business is obedience. And for me, obedience to the call on my life, whatever happened, are my 2 boys that we've adopted now, who are 15 and 16, are they gonna change the world? Are my biological kids? Is the neighbor who hears about our story? I'm so looking for the outcome, and just keeps coming back to obedience to the call, do so joyfully.
Beautiful.
And it makes a difference to those boys, and it makes a difference to the people who watch the story, because maybe they'll say, I know Tracy, if she can adopt 2 more kids, then certainly I can. So maybe it's just that big ripple effect, but that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to take good care of the call and the purpose, all of us, to take good care of the call and the purpose on our life, and let the outcome fall as it may.
So 6 million orphans, you go take 2, starfish, the beach.
Yeah.
It makes a difference to this one.
Yeah.
And you said that you brought a picture?
Yes, I have a picture of my 2 boys, Joseph and Bradley. And that's them. They're 15 and 16 today. And we keep starfish hanging on the wall in our home to remember that, all we have to do is what we're called and what we're passionate about.
There they are. There they are. Oh, there.
Holding their fish. And
I love this.
At first, they're like, seriously, it's such a beautiful story and all that, but the reality behind this picture is like, Mom, why are we taking a picture of these? Why'd you take this off the wall? This is dusty. I'm like, okay, well, let's go back to the bigger, that's the beautiful piece that's the reality of the call, is that it's always a little messy sometimes, but yeah.
So you and Casey in your home have the 2 starfish visually, so basically every day when you're walking around, you see that, which reminds you again that no, you didn't take care of the 6 million orphans in Ethiopia, but you did your part.
That's right.
And that's what Change Your World is all about. We didn't say change the world. We said change your world. Mm-hmm. Right where you are, there's a starfish. just waiting for you to pick it up, give it life, and throw it back in the water. Tracy, that was a beautiful story. Thanks for adding to this chapter. Tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice. In session 2, I want to talk to you about chapter 2 of Change Your World, which is about become a catalyst for change. And I start the chapter with a great quote from Steve Jobs, who basically says, the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are usually the ones who do. So as you're going through these chapters with me on Change Your World, you do understand that I'm appealing to the crazy people. So have you got that feeling? I'm not appealing to the people who say, that couldn't happen. You got to be just a little bit on the edge of crazy. So, just let me just check here in my live audience right here. How many of you think you qualify for crazy, huh? You qualify? Oh, this is good. I like it. In fact, look. Hey, you'll love this. Look at the person beside you, say, I think you're a crazy person. Go ahead and tell them, I think you're crazy. Well, the crazy person that I'm talking about in chapter 2 is a catalyst. And let me define catalyst for us, because this is foundational for the chapter. A catalyst is a person who creates positive change in their world through their ideas, through their actions, and through their influence. So, if you're a catalyst, you're bringing positive change because of what you think, your ideas, what you do, your actions, and who you are, your influence. What I want us to understand about this chapter is, again, positive change doesn't just happen. If it's going to happen, it has to be intentional. I mean, there are many things in life that just happen, but positive change isn't one of them. In fact, when I teach the principle, everything worthwhile is uphill, the principle I'm really teaching is that everything that is valuable and positive and healthy and good for you is a struggle. It doesn't just happen. Nothing just happens uphill. A lot of things just happen downhill. A lot of things can roll on their own if it's a gravity issue and they're going downhill. You don't need to push them. You don't need to even think about it. It's just they're going downhill. But the moment you go uphill, now you have to be conscious. You have to be intentional in your action. And this chapter is be a catalyst with your ideas, with your actions, with your influence. But understand that if you're going to be this catalyst, again, it has to be intentional. And again, we're going back even to chapter 1, shading it on the fact that good intentions will not do it. It has to become good actions. You see, you got to ask yourself this question: which world do I live in? Do I live in the world of it just happened? Or do I live in the world I made it happen? The vast majority of people, they don't lead their life, they accept their life. The vast majority of people live in what I call the it just happened world. You see, confused people ask what happened. Comfortable people live life that just happened. And catalyst people intentionally make it happen. So again, this is all about good intentions versus good actions. You see, people with good intentions want to add value to others, but they find reasons not to do it. People with good actions add value to others, and they always find a way to do it. People with good intentions are passive, inconsistent, and their life begins to be quite disappointing. People with good actions, they're deliberate, they're consistent, they're willful. Good actions represent the dividing line between words and results. That's the dividing line. good actions. That's why I'm very excited about, again, Change Your World and the resources that we're going to be able to put in people's hands, because I think a lot of people don't take action because they don't have the resources. I think they don't take action because they don't have the tools. I think they don't take action sometimes because they don't have someone else to kind of go with them to be what you might call a team and a support person. I think that sometimes they don't take actions because they lack a strategy. So when we decided to change your world and do a transformation movement, we looked at all the reasons why people procrastinate, all the reasons why people don't act, and we said we have to remove all those reasons, okay? We have to make sure that for every reason why you don't do something, we have a reason and a resource. For every reason you don't do something, we have a resource that'll help you do it. And we decided that's what we're going to do. We're going to major on that. Peter Drucker, who I had the privilege in the 80s of having him do some mentoring in my life, was really a person that was not, he was a management expert, but he was not a person that really wanted to go too far out to try to predict the future. And his words, I'll never forget, in one of the sessions he was teaching us, he said, you cannot predict the future, but you can create it. And I love that in light of this chapter of being a catalyst for change, is that what I want you to think of is we're not trying to predict tomorrow, we're just trying to create it. And when we create it, it's because we become a catalyst. So I'm going to introduce you to a new word that I was introduced to by Rob Hoskins. Rob Hoskins is the co-author with me on Change Your World. You know, most of my books I don't co-author with anyone. But this was such a big task. I thought I needed somebody else that had experience in changing their world, and he is the CEO of One Hope, that has put literally over 1 billion pieces of literature and books in the hands of children around the world. And he is a change your world man, leader, person that's got this experience. And so I said, Rob, I think I just need somebody to come alongside of me and add value. And in every chapter, Rob, some of the stories you're going to love in this book, Rob brought so many of the stories to me of things that he had experienced in his leadership. But one of the things he did in this chapter is he introduced me to a word that I'm going to introduce you to now. And it's I don't think it's a word, really. I don't think it, but it's going to be a word. Because what how does a word become a word? Somebody speaks it. I mean, that's how a word becomes a word. And so we're going to make a word a word. If it's not a word, it's what I would like you to describe yourself. And the word is possibilist. P-O-S-S-I-B-I-L-I-S-T. I'm a possibilist, okay? And I think catalyst, since this is a chapter on how to be a catalyst for positive change, what I think is the core character of a person that is a catalyst for change is that they're a possibilist, okay? So what I'm going to read to you, because Rob introduced me to a writer by the name of Hans Rosling, and so he got it from Hans. So really, Rob wasn't so brilliant either, okay? Rob was just a little more brilliant than me because he got it before I did. And so he introduced me. And so I'm going to read what Hans says because this is just terrific, okay? So just sit and let me read to you for a couple of minutes. Possible, okay. People often call me an optimist because I show them the enormous amount of progress that they didn't know about. He said, that makes me angry. I'm not an optimist. That makes me sound naive. I'm a very serious possibilist. It means someone who neither hopes without reason nor fears without reason. Someone who constantly resists the over-dramatic worldview. As a possibilist, I see all this progress and it fills me with conviction and hope that further progress is possible. Now, this is not optimistic. It is having a clear and reasonable idea about how things are. It is having a worldview that is constructive and useful. So when people wrongly believe that nothing is improving, they may conclude that nothing we have tried so far is working, and they lose confidence in measures that actually do work. He said, I meet many people who tell me that they've lost all hope with humanity, or they become what I call radicals, supporting drastic measures that are counterproductive when in fact the methods we already use to improve our world are working just fine. A solution that works for me is to persuade myself to keep two thoughts in my head at the same time. It seems that when we hear someone say things are getting better, we think that they are saying, don't worry, relax, or even kind of look away. But when I say things are getting better, I'm not saying those things at all. I'm certainly not advocating looking away from the terrible problems in the world. I am saying that things can be both bad and get better. Okay. That paragraph I just read to you, or those three paragraphs I really just read to you, I'm going to break it down for you. My name's John. I'm your friend. I'm a communicator. I take something complex, I make it simple. Here's what a possibilist is. Because I'm a possibilist, I think you, if you're not, you will become a possibilist. Here's what a possibilist is. Number one, I think progress is possible, but it's not easy. That's a possibilist. It's possible, it's not easy. It's uphill all the way. We've already talked about that. Because I'm a possibilist, I see things as they are. I'm talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. I see things as they are, but I'm not discouraged. Oh, this is key. I can live in a very realistic, difficult world, but I'm a possibilist. I see things as they are, but I'm not discouraged. Thirdly, I am unwilling to look away from problems around me. The answer is not ignoring the issues, overlooking the issues, evading the issues. So, as a possibilist, I think progress is possible, but not easy. I see things as they are, but I'm not discouraged. I'm unwilling to look away from problems that are around me. And fourthly, I'm willing to be a catalyst for transformation. Now, if that resonates with you, then it's highly probable that you are a possibilist and you're a candidate for Change Your World transformation movement. Let me give you an example, I think, of possibilist. I didn't know it when it happened to me, but it happened clear back in 2011. Equip, my nonprofit organization, started off to train leaders around the world, and we began to see some success. And so within a few years, I gave out what I called the Million Leader Mandate, which means let's train 1 million leaders in the world. And then we became so really good at it that I said, let's not only train 1 million leaders in the world, but let's train leaders in every country. And it just kind of grew and blossomed until at the end story, 19 years later, from starting with nothing, 19 years later, we trained 5 million leaders in every country of the world. And we became the premier equipping leadership organization in the world. And so our beautiful board, people that have been with me for many, many years, close friends, terrific leaders in their own right. We had a board meeting, and the board meeting was very crucial because it was like, what do we do now? And there was a segment of the board, again, great friends of mine, who said, John, we started off to do 1 million, and then let's do it in every country. We ended up doing 5 million in every country. Let's high five each other. Let's have a party. Let's celebrate. And let's say we're done. And there's times to say you're done. And we accomplished our goal, so let's be done. And although I was all for the celebration because everybody worked hard and deserved it, there was something stirring within me that I knew we weren't done. Now, as a leader, you maybe haven't been here before, but if you haven't, you will be sometime. There are times when you know you need to continue, but you can't articulate it. There are times when you know you need to continue, but you have no valid reason to continue. You have nothing that you can point out and say, because of this, we should continue. And that's exactly where I was as we were talking about this. And as the day wore on, this was an all-day board meeting, the more I felt within myself that we needed to go from training leaders to helping leaders be transformational. Training leaders gives them the skill set to know how to lead people, which is very important. Transformational leaders, though, is another level completely up. You not only have the skill set to lead people well, you also have the giftedness and ability to bring change in their life. So you're not only changing direction, you're changing their heart. You're changing the person. And so when I began to talk to the board about, I thought we needed to go to the next level of taking those trained leaders and other leaders and helping them to become transformational, there was a considerable amount of pushback. Not negative, wrong pushback, just friends of mine who just said, John, what do you mean by transformational? And I was incredibly frustrated because I couldn't articulate what I felt. In fact, my frustration kind of boiled over after me trying to help them see that, and I could tell that I wasn't doing a good job because some of them weren't seeing it. And I remember I finally said, well, I can't really articulate it like I want to, but I do know this. When I see it, I'll know it. And for some, there were some that said, John, we're going with you. We're going to do transformation. And there were some that just kind of said, you know, that's just not quite good enough. That day, I had board members that left me. Now, didn't leave me as far as friends, didn't leave me as far as caring for me. They just didn't see the rest of the journey. I know what it's like to finish a board meeting and have people who love you dearly shake your hand and say, thanks for the journey. I think it's time for me to get off. And I can still remember as I watched some board just migrate and say, I had some board members say, we don't understand what you're going for, but we know you and we're just going to we're trusting you. We're going to trust you. There were a few that kind of caught it. Most of them that stayed with me didn't catch it. And then there were some that just said, John, we've loved this journey, but we've got to move on. The reason I'm telling you this story is because when you're a catalyst for change, not everybody will go with you. And I cannot be your friend if I don't tell you that the moment you start talking like I'm talking, and you start doing what I'm doing, there are going to be people that won't understand. And trust me on this, there will be people who won't go with you. And I guess I'm saying to you, when they don't go with you, don't feel sorry for yourself. Remember me. They didn't go with me either. I think sometimes we have an idealistic idea that the great leaders never have problems, and it's just the average leaders that have problems. And I just want you to know that the greater leader you have, that you not only have greater victories, you also have greater battles. But that was a life-changing day for me, because I walked out of that meeting knowing for sure that the journey had to continue. And yet at the same time, not even knowing how it was going to continue. Don't miss this. In your leadership journey, you don't have to have all the answers. But you do have to act upon what you know. You have to be true to yourself. You have to be true to your vision. And when you act on what you know, even though you don't have total knowledge, total understanding, total clarity, what you'll discover is that you get inward strength and courage because you stepped out and stood up. That will give you moral authority. Moral authority is a result of doing the things that you passionately believe in, regardless of approval. It's so interesting. On the front of moral authority, you get little approval. On the back of it, they almost bow before you. And so that day, with some of my board members, not all my board members, we began to go down this transformational track. That day, and I wrote this in the chapter, that day I walked out of that meeting, a meeting that I could not articulate well what I was wanting, a meeting that I didn't have a plan, a meeting that I didn't have total support, a meeting that I didn't have the resources, but it was okay. It was okay because I was determined to obey. I was determined to follow through. I was determined to take the next step. Now, by the way, I can articulate transformation very well today. In fact, Change Your World is a whole book about transformation and how it works and the strategy that you need and the resources and the tools. And when you read the book, you're going to say, oh my God, John, you got this transformation thing down. Do you understand? Please take the journey with me. When I started, I had none of it down. I couldn't have written one page about transformation. In fact, I tried 4 books ago, maybe it was 5 books ago now, to kind of flesh out transformation in a book that I wrote called Intentional Living. A book that's helped a lot of people, because that book really helped people go from good intentions to good actions. But as I finished that book, and it's out today and it's sold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies, but the point being, as I look back at it, that was my first attempt to do transformation, and it didn't get there. It didn't get there. In fact, by the time I had the manuscript in, I said to myself, what I really said to myself was, oh crap. That's what I said. I was trying to make it a little bit better than that, but in fact, I may not even said oh crap, but anyway. Let's put it this way. I was very aware that the book wasn't where I wanted it to be. Okay, got to talk to you again. In your leadership journey, there are a lot of times when you're aware you didn't quite hit it. It's okay, because you're still in the game. In other words, you have to have a few misses before you get to that hit. You see, if I go up and even go into the batter's box against a professional baseball player, if I think I only get 3 strikes when I get up there, to be honest with you, I know going in I'm going to strike out. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you want to save your time. But if you told me, go on up and you swing the bat, and guess what? You can swing as long as you want to swing. Just keep swinging. You want to swing for an hour? You want to swing all? He'll keep throwing. You keep. Can I tell you something? I can go up with quite confidence that sooner or later, that ball will hit that bat. Yeah, it's just a matter of time. But I gotta stay in the game. And I'm saying that to many of you because so many times, we ask ourselves, what are the odds of me winning before I get into the game? This is not an odds game here. If we're doing odds and if we're in Vegas, we're going to lose. The bet's not going to make it because what we're trying to do hasn't been done. So it's not for the timid person who's sitting there and saying, well, I'm not really sure if I want to join because I'm not really sure that you can accomplish this task. Please do me a favor. Go home. It's okay. Love and blessings. This is not for everyone. This is for people who are willing to get into something bigger than they are, fully knowing that they may never see the results they want to see. But can I tell you what? It's okay. It's okay, because I play an infinite game. I don't play a finite game. In my game, there is no finish line. By the way, I was born into the game that was already being played, and I'm going to die in the game that continues. So when you have a big picture, you just say, my job isn't to make sure that my odds are so high that I get a win. My job is to do something that is so incredibly beautiful that even if I do it, and even if we don't win, lives are being changed. You've heard me tell the story about the kid when I was speaking at a leadership conference. Speaking to about 1,000 people, everybody was having a good time taking notes. I'm at the end of my day, I'm signing books for the last time, and this kid comes up to sign his book, and he said, man, he said, this is amazing. You're doing all this leadership stuff, and people are laughing and loving and clapping and cheering and taking notes and buying books. He said, I've decided today that I want to do what you do. I said, that's good. Yeah. It's nice. I said, I have a question for you. Would you like to do what I did so you could do what I do? Of course he wants to do what I do. That's an IQ test. The question is not, do you want to do what I do? The question is, do you want to did what I did so you can do what I do? And the problem is we want to do without did. And if you don't did, you're just in doo-doo. Yeah. Your greatest victories is not in the do. Your greatest victories, it's in the did. It's the didding. I think I just started another new word. Didded and possibilist. Just hang with us. We'll just give you a whole new vocabulary. It's in the did that we get to do what we do. So you're going to now see the story of a lady, a young lady, a great lady. She inspires me often. Her name is Gabby. She's one of our John Maxwell team coaches. She came to a conference and heard me talk several years ago now, probably 6, about transformation. This little girl, this mom of 2 children, just precious little girl, her and her husband in Paraguay, decided to be a possibilist. And here's her story.
I love people, and I love my people. For me, the Paraguayans mean a lot. And when I see that woman in the street trying to do something to survive, and when you're in a situation, a better situation, you start asking yourself, what can I do, you know, to help them, to add value to them, and to maybe show them that there is a better way. I went to Guatemala, and what I saw there and what I lived there just changed my whole life. And I came back to my country sure that it was gonna happen here. I was talking to John about it, and when I think about that moment in the States, and I have the picture right now in my mind, in front of John Maxwell with my passport, and John giving me the word transformation. And today I look at that, and he's here in Paraguay doing a transformational movement, a national transformational movement. That says a lot.
So we just this week have brought 250 of our leadership trainers. They will be spending time teaching these facilitators how to have a roundtable. And by Thursday, we'll have 15,000 of them trained. Those 15,000, the very next week, we'll begin to train 5 to 7 to 8 each. So you can quickly see that within about 10 to 12 weeks, approximately 70 to 75,000 Paraguayans will be trained in having leadership values.
We want to serve the Paraguayans. We're here to invest in them, to train them, to give them the tools, and to say, hey, now you go and do it. Just do it. You can be great, and you can have an awesome life, a life of significance. That's the life you want to live. And I know with John Maxwell and the team and the coaches, we're gonna accomplish that.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if history would report that you became the catalyst for transformation in your country?
When I'm working with Transformation Paraguay, I think a lot about my kids, because this is what I'm building for them. I want them to have a better country, a better Paraguay than the one that I have. For the people that have the same dream and that also want to transform their country, they just need to do it. They just need to believe.
So excited that I would be able to be a part of something like this. I'm so excited that we have people like Tim and Gabby who decide to make a difference in their country. Didn't make sense. Had no insiders helping her. Couldn't have explained it if you would have asked her. Everything worthwhile is uphill.
So Paraguay is gonna be a model. That's the word. Paraguay is gonna be a model for other countries. That's my dream. That's what I believe. We are doing something wonderful. And not only for Paraguay, for more countries. This is just the beginning.
In chapter 3 on Change Your World, the title is We All Need Each Other. And I really got the title of this chapter from a quote of Mother Teresa that basically says, I can do what you cannot do, and you can do what I cannot do, and together we can do great things. In this chapter, I talk about what I call transformational truth. Let me give you maybe three of them, okay? The first truth is this. We is more important than me. One of the things we need to buy into in transformation is that we do need each other. And in the early years, in my early years of wanting to make a difference, I was very young, I was very inexperienced, but I worked very hard to make a difference, and I was making a difference as a person, as an individual. But it wasn't long until I came up to the realization that although I could personally make a difference, a positive difference in people's lives, that it was limited. It was limited to how much time I had. It was limited to my gifts, my talents, my experience, my perspectives. And I realized that if I was going to make a big difference, I was going to have to open up my world, and I was going to have to include others. And in my book, in this chapter, I quote Reid Hoffman. And here, I want you to catch this quote. No matter how brilliant your mind or your strategy, if you're playing a solo game, you will always lose out to a team. Always. And for a first couple of years in making a difference, I was playing a solo game. And all of a sudden I began to realize that there was a limitation to that game. And so that I was going to need to find people. I was going to need to include people. I was going to need to develop a team. I was going to soon realize that teamwork is what makes the dream work. And so I took the letter, or the word team, and I developed this little statement, acrostic, that basically says, together everyone achieves more. And when we come together as a team, then every one of us benefit, and every one of us, it gets better, it gets more expansive. It has a more of an impact when we begin to understand what we can do as a team. Miles McPherson is a wonderful friend of mine, and he was a wonderful athlete. But he wrote a book called The Third Option. And it's really a terrific book during all of the issues within our own country of racial division or something. I've made a very intentional, purposeful commitment to read books from African-American authors that can help me with my perspective, because I want to do better. I want to add and be a part of the solution. And in his book, The Third Option, his thesis is it's not about me and it's not about you. It's about us. And he opens up the picture of it, helps us all understand that if we live in the first option, it's all about me, or if I live in the second, it's all about you, we're incomplete. It has to be about us. So transformational truths, the first one just is on teamwork, and that is, we is more important than me. Let me give you the second transformational truth. Who is more important than how? If I'm going to have a team, who's going to be on my team? The who separates the players and the pretenders. Again, I'm going back to my early days of trying to make a difference, and all I can tell you is my early days, of which I had much more trial and error than I would have liked to have had. But I remember when I said, okay, I need to make a difference with people, I just went out and said, do you want to be on the team? And I was overwhelmed, excited, because everybody wanted to be on the team. I thought, oh my gosh, everybody wants to be on the team. And so we got on the team, and I started casting the vision of what we're going to accomplish, and it's going to be uphill all the way. And all of a sudden I began to realize that some of those people that were coming in the entrance were looking for the exit. And it was kind of like, oh, here comes my team. Oh yeah, here comes, oh yes, we're going to do this together. We're going to make, oh, there goes my team. And then I realized they weren't my team. There was nothing team about them. You see, I started off by saying, I want to make a difference with people. And one day I realized, no, that's not how you make a difference. It was a big graduation for me when I stopped saying I want to make a difference with people and started saying I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference. You see, that's the secret sauce. You don't need everyone, but you need people who really want to make a difference. So that's when my leadership quit being like a popularity contest. That's when my leadership was not kind of like social media and how many likes do I have. It's when my leadership began to realize that you don't need everyone, but you do need someone who is willing to carry that load with you. I used to be, I would get them on my leadership train. Literally, I would get them on my leadership train, and then we'd maybe take a 30-minute break, and then I'd say, all aboard, and then I'd have some people, they wouldn't get aboard. And so I go over and say, it's time to get on the train. And they look, I said, well, we're having our picnic lunch here. And well, okay, well, can we eat the lunch on the train? And I'd talk them back on, and I'd put them on the train. I'd fasten their seatbelt and say, okay, we're ready, let's go. And then we'd stop again a little later, and they'd get off the train. And I found that I was spending all my time going after people who didn't want to be on the train. And one day, I had a great idea. And instead of standing there waiting for people to get on the train and say, all aboard, all aboard, all aboard. One day I said, we don't do all aboard anymore. Let's quietly leave. Oh, happy day. I left my load behind me. We could take higher mountains than we'd ever taken before because I didn't have to hit the ball and drag Charlie, hit the ball and drag Charlie, hit the ball and drag Charlie. After a while, don't you just want to hit Charlie? If you're Charlie, we don't want you in the Change the World movement. Honest to God. We don't want you to help us. You know, leaders understand that some of their greatest days are when they have not blessed additions, but they have blessed subtractions. This is not for everyone. We've got to separate the players from the pretenders. A third transformational truth is that what unites us is greater than what divides us. This is huge, especially in a dysfunctional leadership culture that we're in right now, where leaders are always dividing people. What unites us is greater than what divides us. And let me be very clear about this. When you get on the transformational team, that doesn't mean that we all think alike, look alike, have the same culture, have the same faith, have the same background. Doesn't mean any of that. But what it does mean is teaching values and bringing transformation into people's lives is a cause so great that we're willing to waive the differences. It's okay. Because the cause is what unites us is greater than what divides us. You see, what we focus on expands. If I focus on our differences, we'll never do anything together. We'll never be a team. Because you and I, we can't agree on everything. I mean, there are so many things that you and I wouldn't agree on, and I hate it, the fact that you're wrong every time. You know I'm kidding. You know I'm just having fun now. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to focus on our differences and what divides us. I'm going to focus on what we're trying to accomplish, because what you focus on expands. If you focus on differences, they expand until the differences become insurmountable and you can't even have a team because you got a barrier, you got a wall. But if you focus on what unites us, all of a sudden we begin to come together. And what we focus on is we focus on valuing people and adding value to them. That's who we are. That's what we do. We are people of value who value people and add value to it. That's who we are. Period. End of story. This is so simple. I'm a person of value, and I value every person. You say, John, what do you mean you value every person? What I mean is I value every person. What part of that don't you understand? I totally value you. You're God's creation. Understand, God created you with a purpose and a promise. Why would I, how could I ever devalue someone that God created in his image? So when we focus on our vision of adding value to people and valuing people, then our vision allows us to see the possibilities. Now, don't miss this. In fact, I wrote it down. I want you to write it down because I don't want you to miss this, okay? Our vision helps us see our possibilities, and our values help us achieve our possibilities. The vision helps us see what could happen. The values help us to achieve what is happening. It's John F. Kennedy, when he was president, and said, let both sides of the aisle focus on what unites us, not on what divides us. The fourth transformational truth, and I love this, what we have is more important than what we lack. So many times, movements don't move because we look at what we don't have, what we lack, and we say, well, you know, oh my gosh, I would like to do it, but. And remember this, whenever we begin to offer excuses of why we don't take action, remember this, the worst excuse is the best excuse. Because the best excuse we buy into. It's so believable that we kind of buy into it. So the worst excuse is the best excuse. And so what we have to do is we have to understand that instead of looking at what we lack, we need to look at what we have. When we look at what we lack, we will always get off track. Just remember that. That's just a little ditty that I wrote. And I'm very disappointed because only about 10% of you wrote it down. But it's okay. I'll repeat it again. And I'll watch you and I'll repeat it again and again. And then when you write it down, I'll move on. Now I'm having fun with you. When we look at what we lack, we will always get off track. Because we all lack things in our life. I love the expression, live on the other side of yes. That's the side I live on. You can either, some people live on the other side of no. In fact, one of the things I think that surprised me most about COVID-19, in fact, the greatest surprise I think I've had of COVID-19 is the fear factor is much larger than I would have ever imagined in people's lives. Now, I'm not trying to in any way diminish the crisis. I'm not, that isn't my purpose. I'm just saying, when you frame your life with fear, please understand the outcome will never be good. But if you frame your life with no, you're going to get an awful lot of dead ends in life. Just as if you frame your life with yes, you're going to have dead ends that all of a sudden begin to open up. And I live on the other side of yes. In fact, let me just say this. I said yes to training leaders before I ever trained a leader. And I said yes to writing books before I ever wrote a book. And I said yes to making a difference before I ever made a difference. And I said yes to transforming leaders before I ever formed a leader. In fact, if you want to know what I call the kind of the Maxwell formula of how this thing works, I'm going to give it to you right now because it just really works for me. Here it is. Say yes, tell the world, figure it out. That's me. Say yes, tell the world, figure it out. The reason that I am so excited about that is because that's the life again of, as a word we've already been introduced in another chapter, that's the life of a possibilist. A possibilist says yes, tells the world, figures it out. So when people say, John, you know, what's your bucket list? My bucket list is transformation. Transformation of lives, families, communities, states, maybe countries. Say yes. I've already said yes to it. I've said yes to it regardless of the odds. I've said yes to it without the knowledge of everything I need. See, again, every step that is a yes opens up another possibility. But you have to keep moving to receive the resources. The moment in any kind of a vision that I stop, here's what happens. And people stop all the time. They stop and say, well, you know what? I lost clarity. Okay. There's nothing, by the way, there's nothing wrong with stopping for a moment, reflecting, getting your breath, collecting yourself together and going on. So we're not, but when people stop well, I haven't gone on because the resources stop. I don't have the resources, or I don't have the people that I need, or can I tell you something? Resources don't come to people that are stopped. It's the movement that gives the advance attraction. Remember, when I start taking action, action gives traction. The moment I take action, that's when the resources come to me. They don't come to me when I'm sitting. They come to me when I'm walking. So many times we stop the resources in our own life because we say, well, I'm not going to move until somebody takes care of this, or somebody helps me here, or until I get this money. And the moment that we stop, the resources stop. Action is always rewarded by resources. And I say that to you because perhaps in your own life, in your own business perhaps, you're at a place where you're just looking at yourself and you're saying, wow, you know, I just kind of, I've stopped. Say yes. And why do you tell the world? You have to tell the world as quick as you can so you can't talk yourself out of it. Remember, a commitment that's not made public is not a solid commitment. You'll cheat yourself every day of your life talking yourself out of something if nobody knows. But the moment somebody knows, they won't let you talk yourself out of it anymore. Say yes, tell the world, figure it out. Now, I am extremely excited because I'm about to introduce a very close friend of mine, Casey Crawford, who is a person who lives on the other side of yes. He's a person that says yes, tells the world, and then figures it out. His story is so inspirational to me, and it's going to be inspirational to you. He's the CEO, co-founder of the, I think maybe, Casey, you can tell me if I'm wrong, 6th largest mortgage company in America now. But the reason he started his business and how he uses his business and his resources to transform his community will inspire every person here that has a business. So I want you to welcome my friend, sometimes my bodyguard, Casey Crawford. Come on up here, Casey. Give him a hand, huh? It's so good to see you. I love you so much. Huh? Have a seat, friend.
Hug, shake.
Yeah, no, you and I hug. You and I hug. Casey, thanks for coming. He jumped on a plane this morning from Charlotte, where their headquarters. I was talking to him the other day. We have the privilege, our team has the privilege of mentoring his company. Your top 60 people in your company across America, every month I do a mentoring call for them and with them. And so I said, Casey, I'm going to be teaching these lessons. Can you come down and tell your story? And Casey played football, kind of looks that part, doesn't he? Played football, and we start your story, Casey, with your Tampa Bay, and you've just won the Super Bowl. Okay, start it there and just, come on. Take it.
All right, what John's referring to is being the least significant member, the least amount of contribution ever to a Super Bowl victory. I hold that honor as doing less to earn a Super Bowl ring than any person in history, but I did get to be a part of the 2003 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, John Gruden-led Super Bowl. And it was a really impactful moment in my life. As a young man, I'd always thought about what I wanted to get out of life and things I wanted to do in life.
Sure.
And standing on the 50-yard line holding the Lombardi Trophy, married to my best friend. I got to marry my best friend a couple years earlier, Michelle. And Bon Jovi was standing next to me singing It's My Life. Right? Any Bon Jovi fans here? Yeah, he's just as dreamy in person, I promise. And you know,
that's kind of like as good as it gets, you think, isn't it? Huh?
It was about as good as it could get with my wife, Bon Jovi, and holding the trophy. And I realized, in that moment, I said, 23 years old, and I've just achieved everything I thought I wanted out of life. If you'd asked me all the way up to that point, what did I want out of life? It was that moment. And yet, I think God gave it to me at a very young point in life. And on the plane ride home, I really began to process what's next. What's next? And what I really became impacted with in my own heart and spirit was that I wanted to live, John, as you have, a life of impact. A life of impact. And not one that was just based on entertainment. And I wasn't even contributing much to the entertainment with that team. I said I thought that there was a more unique role that God had for me to play, to live a life of impact and serve the world. And I just asked, I said, I'm going to leave football. I'm going to leave football and go pursue that full time with my life. And in 2007, in the midst of the Great Recession, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I watched as Bank of America and Wachovia went out of business. Bank of America crumbled and came on the brink. And at that point in time, our nation was plunged into the greatest economic recession we had seen since the Great Depression. And in fact, our world took a major step backwards and had a huge financial hit that was largely centered around banking and more particularly mortgages in the U.S. And I'd been in mortgages and had really been praying that Lord would use me for some kind of life of impact. And I saw that moment as this quintessential moment to step into, to went, okay, this is what it has been for. This is what it has been for. This is what God has purposed for me to step into, to try to redeem and restore and bring some light into a dark place in what was going on in banking at that time, about 13 years ago now.
So you started Movement Mortgage at a time when you shouldn't be starting Movement Mortgage, when we're fighting. And so you tell them their secret sauce, how you so quickly ascended into the mortgage business because of the length of the loans.
Yeah, so what we saw in banking and mortgage in particular was that in many ways, banks and mortgage companies had not acted in the long-term best interest of their customers, their teammates, or the communities we were a part of. And that's really what caused so much economic damage around the world. And we said, hey, what if we stepped into that space and said we want to love and value people? And we defined love as to act in the long-term best interest of another, to act and bring value to their life. So at that time, it was taking people about 60 days to close loans. Said, hey, if John was applying for a loan with us, we're going to treat him like family. And my little sister applies for a loan, we're going to treat them like family. And frankly, everyone that we're doing business with is someone's family member. We want to love, serve, and value them because of the intrinsic value and worth that they have. So we're going to treat them with excellence like family. So we started underwriting loans up front. We give a credit decision maker would underwrite your credit file up front, let you know if you qualified for a house before you started shopping. At that time, that was fairly revolutionary. And then we'd have your loan ready to close on the 7th business day. So while folks were taking 60, we started taking 6 to get done the same process. That led to a bit of market share opportunity. And we stepped into it. We thought people wanted a better opportunity to invest their lives into a company, or we call it a community of purpose that existed to love and value and serve others with excellence. And that's led to about 4,000 new team members over the last decade. We've been able to actually gift over $1 billion in equity out to foundation. We've given over $200 million to some neat initiatives we're excited about, but it's been a really neat journey.
This is beautiful. Now, don't miss this, because I mean, you're looking at the bigness of what they're doing. But I want you to hear the purpose, because you shared with me, Casey, that when you started, you determined that you would live on a certain amount of money yourself, and that you were going to limit that, and that you were going to build this business, but you were truly going to build this business. I mean, you wanted to bless all the people in the company and for them all to do financially well. So we're not against that at all. But what you really wanted to do is take your business and drive it as a financial resource to transform and change your company. Tell us about that for a moment.
Well, I think that Super Bowl experience was really important for me, because what it taught me there in life is that I didn't grab the brass ring, but I got the Super Bowl ring. You know? I got to take hold of it. And what I realized was there was a bit of emptiness in that moment. There was a lot of excitement, but a bit of emptiness the next morning as I realized that really my life had been oriented in just about every way to serve myself.
Sure.
To serve some desire that I had.
Sure.
And what I realized with the next 60, 80 years, whatever God was going to give me the rest of my life, is I wanted to invest it in loving and serving others. But to do that, he had to put some hard stops and some rails around me around money, because that was something I worshiped. I kind of traded football fame for money, and that just became the new game that I played. And so, yeah, very early on, we put some kind of financial boundaries about how much me and my family would ever receive from the company, and that's been a huge gift to us because it kept me from looking at it. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar organization. And we're able to give away over 98% of our net income every year, which is pretty exciting.
Wait, did you just hear this? Did I hear you say you were able to give away 98% of your net income?
Yeah, some of it goes into our foundation. There's a lot of tax structures and kind of things with it. But yeah, I personally make less than 1/10 of 1% of our net income goes to me or my family, which and we do very well. And my family's blessed. My kids got everything they need. It's been a really neat journey.
This is huge. This is huge. In other words, he started his business to make a difference in the communities. And so tell him some of the things that you're doing, because this is very exciting. Tell him some of the things you're doing in Charlotte right now.
Yeah, one thing we see with business, it's very easy, and most of us go into business to love and value wealthy people. We love and value all people, right? But then sometimes business values people with money a little bit more based on the value of your bank account, because frankly, it's easy to make money from people that have money. What business has not done a great job of is loving and value the marginalized and the poor.
Yeah.
And I've been a follower of Jesus my whole life, and I read the Bible, and there's a lot of instruction, I think, to us to love and value the poor. And so we've said, while our business may be oriented to those who have the money and financial means to buy a home, our giving and our foundation is going to be oriented to those who may never. and we want to maybe equip them for the next generation to be able to realize that dream of home ownership. So we've thought about ways that we can partner with our state and federal governments to love the most marginalized children among us. And John, you talk about unity being more powerful than division.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of unity. There's almost no one I meet that disagrees with the idea that we should love, value, and serve the most marginalized children in the communities we're a part of.
So what are you doing? Because remember that, well, let's go to the charter school.
Yep.
You started one.
Yeah, we're now on to our third charter school. We started charter schools, free public charter schools for kids who live out or below the poverty line, and we brought in world-class educators. The state and federal government gives us a tuition allocation per child, which we use to educate those children. And our kids are doing exceptionally well relative to their demographic peers, and continue to really improve every year. The neat thing about it is we're able to do it, and with the money that we receive from the state and federal government, we're able to run it at a slight profit. And the profit doesn't go to me or anyone else. It goes right back into a foundation that reinvests back into the community, that neighborhood, building the next school and the next school. So we're on to our fourth school now. We have a plan to build 100. We're living on this side of yes, John. We got a plan to build 100 in the next 10 years. And we're telling the world.
And then you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out.
And we're going to have a team to do it. But we don't only want to redeem education, but we want you to do it with housing, healthcare, and education all together, because these major power structures in all of our communities that if you have wealth, you have access to.
Yes.
If you do not, you're very marginalized. You're put an uphill battle. So we want to redeem those different places in our communities.
So Casey, tell them. So I know the charter school you took me over to that we were visited that day, which is incredible. But remember, you got over there and you found out that they didn't have the medical help they had.
Yep.
Tell them about the medical help and then the housing. I mean, in other words, what you're going to hear now is as Casey goes in and starts making a change, positive change in his community, one door opens up another door, which opens up another door, which opens up. And by the way, you only get the doors open if you're moving.
John refers to them as doors opening. I might have challenges presented that we weren't aware of, right? And so I love how he's always frames it as an opportunity. Adversity is an opportunity. And it was. We went in and did education. What we found, we brought the school, the hospital system came and said, hey, this is wonderful that you've done this. And you have this great new space. Did you know that many of the mothers that are dropping their children off here don't have a pediatrician within 5 miles of where they live? And they don't have transportation to get there. And that kind of broke our hearts. And they said, you have this big, beautiful building. Would you give us part of this building to serve as a clinic for this neighborhood? And we, immediately said yes, figured it out later, said yes. And now we have a wonderful movement clinic that sits in that neighborhood. And now really part of our planning is that every school, every educational building will be including a wellness clinic. Yeah. What parent doesn't want to be able to have quick, easy access to wellness for their child right on site where their school is? We don't have to pull them out of school, drive across town, get off of work. And so we're just trying to think about how can we love, value, and serve this community just the way I'd want my community and kids served.
So you got care for them medically, and then the housing that you...
Housing, we have a 34,000 unit shortage of affordable housing in Charlotte. And again, didn't know that was as big a challenge as we found out it was. Another group came to us, let us know those statistics and said, would you donate 5 acres of the side of this shopping center that we had purchased for us to build 185 units of affordable housing? We looked at it, said yes, figured it out later, have learned a lot since. And the day we opened it up, we had 1,000 applicants for that housing. So it's totally filled up. And now we're actually working with the largest home builder in a couple states to think about providing 1,000 housing units a year to folks in need. And again, in a sustainable way that actually provides for them becoming homeowners. Yeah. Not just getting affordable housing that becomes some kind of ghetto, but actually helping these individuals become homeowners so that they can start realizing the economic benefits of home ownership.
Yeah, what I love about your business model is you're very generous and you donate a lot of money and you give a lot, but you try to find a way to make it self-perpetuating.
Absolutely.
So that there is a profit that goes right back in so that they can continue, whether it's more charter schools or more clinics. You're constantly saying, how do we keep this self-perpetuating? Yeah. And it's just absolutely incredible. And I'm going to stop here for a moment because I'm going to go back to Casey just for one more closing thought. You perhaps you're a business person, and Casey's just kind of opened up a whole new world to you. And the world basically is, of course, make a good living, take good care of your people, obviously do all that. But what about maybe taking some of that business money and beginning to pour it into your community and beginning to use those resources to help and make a difference? And I think, Casey, I mean, if they loved what you were doing, there would be a way, if they wanted to get hold of your organization, that you would be glad to kind of help them know how they can get started in their community. Is that
absolutely? It's our joy. That's why we talk about being a movement. We know that we need a team. We know we want to be a part of something much bigger than ourselves. So if anybody has heard anything that's interesting to them at all, I'm just going to give you Crawford, CRAWFORD @movement.com. I got an assistant that helps me with that email. But if you email us and just say, hey, I'd like to talk, just let me know. And we actually exist. We have a whole team that's ready to help folks implement a lot of processes and systems that we've found helpful, and a lot we're still learning. So we love to actually connect with other like-minded people to learn as well.
Because one of the things I appreciate about you, Casey, is you're generous to your community, but what you really are desirous is more than just Charlotte to be effective. You want this to happen in every city, because there are businesses in every city that can be doing what you can be doing. It's a priority issue. It's a purpose issue, correct?
It's a purpose issue, and it's a joy opportunity, I'd say. It's a joy opportunity. I want so deeply, I think. I love sharing this because I know the personal joy, satisfaction, encouragement, motivation I get each and every day that I know you get each and every day. That's why
sure.
I love you and love being in business with you and love doing life with you, because there's a deep-seated joy and purpose in loving and valuing and serving the people that are oftentimes overlooked in society.
This is beautiful. Casey, you'll remember this because you were with me. So Casey took me to his charter school. I think maybe the first one you started.
Yep.
And so the school was incredible. Great teachers. Everything was just excellent. What you would want for kids. And so we had a little Q&A with the third graders. So I sat on a little stool, and these third graders are all there, and they're going to ask Mr. Maxwell's leadership questions. And Casey, we had maybe 8 or 10 of your staff and some of my staff that were with me. And I'll never forget this. A third grader named Ethan. He raised his hand for a question. He stood up and he looked at me. He said, Mr. Maxwell, he said, do you ever feel, and he's, just get the picture, a third grader, pretty dramatic. He said, do you ever feel, he puts his hand on his heart, deep down in here, right deep down here. Mr. Maxwell, do you ever feel deep down in your heart that you want to make a difference for other people? Well, I looked around and I thought, Casey, you have planted somebody on me. I looked at him first, and I look at him, tears coming down everybody's eyes. I thought, uh-oh, this is not a plant. This is a little kid at the third grade level who already wants to be transformational, make a difference in people's life. And I said, Ethan, I feel exactly what you feel. And he came out from where he was and came over, and I gave him a big hug. And I said, you and I are just alike. We want to make a difference. And Casey, I'll never forget that. As I looked at that, and I thought, here you are in the business world, put in a charter school available for kids that are in poverty to go get a good education. And here's a third grader who already is saying, I want to make a difference. I'm telling you, if we would teach great values in our school system, we could raise up an army, a generation of kids that want to make a difference. Trust me on this. It's a fact. But it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened unless, Casey, you had said, I want to make a difference. And you inspire me. Every time I'm with him, I just say, I want to do more. I want to do better, because I watch him and I watch his company. But I want this to be especially challenging to the business people. Casey, what would happen? Just think about it. Of all the people that are watching this Change Your World digital product, what would happen if all of a sudden businessmen and women all over the country would say, I want to do what he's doing. I want to in my business field, I want to make a difference like this. I think it would change America very quickly. I don't think the answer is waiting on Washington, D.C. and a bunch of politicians who have a different agenda to ever do what we really need to get done. I think we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I believe that. I think business people are compensated to fix problems and bring value to people's lives.
Yeah.
We just need to reconstitute sometimes who we identify that we want to bring value to. And man, we have to take a look at those who have been most marginalized in our community and think about how can we bring value to those individuals' lives.
Yeah.
Business people were to do that, oh my goodness, man, problems would get solved, communities would be transformed, our world will be changed.
You are the man. Haven't you enjoyed Casey? Movement Board. Give him a hand, would you? Thanks, man. Chapter 4 is entitled, Let's All Get on the Same Page. This is about vision and strategy and having an awareness and understanding of where we are and what we want to accomplish so that we can really do something great together. There's a beautiful African proverb. The first time I saw it was many, many years ago when I was traveling throughout Africa doing leadership conferences. And in the airport, I saw the sign that said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this teaching in this chapter is all about how do we go far. I want to teach you for maybe a couple of minutes about what I call the inevitable return. Let me explain. The inevitable return says that if you give to others long enough, you will receive more than you give. That if you love people deep enough, the love returns to you tenfold. That if you lift people long enough, you get lifted higher. In other words, the inevitable return is that no matter how much you do to help others, in the end, you receive more than you ever gave. I believe totally in the inevitable return. In fact, sometimes I feel a little bad. I sometimes feel that all of the giving and the doing my best to add value to people, I sometimes feel that it's selfish. Now, I don't do it for selfish reasons, but, well, I wrote a book recently called The Leader's Greatest Return, and it's all about how to develop leaders. And basically the last chapter is, I look at all the people that I've spent my life developing, and what I'm realizing at this side of life is I'm receiving more than I ever gave. Now, I didn't give to get. That's not giving, that's trading. I didn't give to get, but because I gave, I got. And what I want us to do in this chapter is I just want us to begin to understand this inevitable return and what happens when we begin to live a life to help add value, transform people, teach values to them, and help lift them to a higher level. I'm going to go a little bit higher than the inevitable return now. I'm going to tell you about the incredible inevitable return. The incredible inevitable return is even greater than the inevitable return. The incredible inevitable return is about us doing it together. You see, there's an inevitable return when I do it myself, but there's an incredible inevitable return when you and I do it together, when we do it as a team, when we give together, when we love and we lift. When we do it together, all of a sudden it begins to compound and multiply. Just as compounding goes through longevity, compounding also goes through teamwork. So if you really want to look at compounding in the true sense, the longer you do something worthwhile, the more it compounds that way in length. But the moment that you and I join hands with others and partner and do things together, there's almost a sudden compounding that happens when we partner with each other. The greatest way that you and I can quickly compound is to join hands with each other. And let's get on the same page is all about doing that. It's all about movement, but it's all about movement together. You know, when you look at the word movement, there are words like stirring. There's when there's a movement, there's a stirring going on. There's an awakening. There's an evolving. There's a changing process. That's all about movement. And so I'm going to give you now, what are the essentials? Because I've studied this. What are the essentials of a movement? What causes a movement to move? When I look at the movement, it's all about the cause and it's all about the people. Let me just read you one paragraph I have in my chapter 4 that we're teaching right now. And it's about the cause. It's difficult to create a focused agenda and build a movement when you're against something instead of for something. Venting doesn't create transformation. You can't build a transformative process based on what you don't like. Negative emotion often comes first when we see injustice, when we see tragedy. And that negative emotion is often the strongest emotion that we feel, but it's not the longest lasting emotion. It's not particularly healthy to try to sustain it. And besides, being against something isn't attractive. It doesn't draw positive people who want to work for positive change. If you want to create a positive change in the world, you have to be for something. We are for adding value to people. We are for valuing people. We are for teaching good values. So how does a transformational movement happen? Now, I have to be honest with you. This is one of my favorite chapters in the book, because when I get to this chapter, I'm now beginning to visually show you how this transformational movement will work. The pictures we're about to give you, to show you, the teaching I'm about to give you, that didn't come out of theory. It came out of the fact that for now several years, we have been in countries, 3 specifically, working with hundreds of thousands, now millions of people, and we have found what makes the movement move. So I'm very excited as I'm going to give you pictures of a transformational movement. And the first picture, are you ready? The first picture is a waterfall, okay? And the reason that we give you the waterfall as a picture is transformation happens top down. It requires leadership. Transformation begins with influence, and influence always flows down, just like a waterfall. So when you think of how do I transform my world? How do I transform my community? Because literally, we will empower and equip hundreds of thousands of people in the next few years to do transformational work in their communities. Well, how do we do that? Well, the first visual is a waterfall. You have to have leadership buy-in. That's a fact. We have a company, the John Maxwell Company, in fact, does leadership training for corporations and companies, small businesses, big businesses. And in our training, there's only one indicator of what we train that's going to be successful. I mean, we have different training programs, so it's not like one training program is really good, one training program is not so good, and wow, they got to get, no. There's only one indicator that when you do training in a company, it's going to be successful. Only one, and we can go to the bank. If the company does what we suggest, the training program will be very successful, and if the company doesn't do what we suggest, no matter what training material we're giving them, they won't be successful. Here's the deciding factor. This is huge. For a training program to be successful in a company, it requires leadership involvement. The leaders have to go to the training also. You don't send the employees to the training. You attend the training. You sit around and you learn together, grow together, work through the issues together. In other words, it involves the physical presence of leaders. What we have learned in transformation of countries is that we don't even go. We don't even go into the country until we get leadership buy-in. And what happens is we don't go until the president invites us in, or the prime minister. And when they invite us in, we go vet them. There have been countries that we've been invited in by the president that we didn't even go. We went to see them, and after a while we said, no. And the reason why is we not only want leadership from government, there are 8 streams of influence in every country. There are 8 streams of influence in a community. Here they are: government, education, business, media, arts, health, religion, and sports. government, education, business, media, arts, health, sports, and religion. Those are the 8. So when we go into a country, we go to the leaders of those 8 spheres of influence. And we get buy-in. And when we mean buy-in is when we come in to teach values and transformation tables, they're at the table. They're at the table with everyone else. And what we realized is transformation, the first picture, it's a waterfall. Top down, leadership has got to be involved. It's going to be the same with you in changing your world, in your community. We're going to help you with this, but we'll help you because you've got to, in fact, I'm just really excited because I was talking to Chad and Danielle today who are in Staten Island, and they're starting, we're putting out some pre-models right now of practicing in the States because in 2021, when my book Change Your World comes out, we're going to hit America hard. And they've already got their 8 streams of influence lined up. They've already got their cabinet laid out. And these are people that are in the game and they're saying, yes, I'll be responsible for business. Yes, I'll be responsible for the healthcare area. We're going to make sure these transformational tables happen in these 8 streams of influence. Waterfall, top down. The second picture I want you to have is the picture of a ladder. And the ladder is exactly opposite of the waterfall. The waterfall is top-down, leadership, influence, and involvement. The ladder is bottom-up. It encourages mobility from people that are at the bottom of society. You see, here's the way this works. Again, the pictures will help you understand everything that we're doing. The waterfall, influence flows down. Transformation moves up. You don't have legitimate transformation until the marginal people of society have been beautifully, positively lifted. And the ladder that we're talking about is a ladder of servanthood. We willingly go in and say, we'll hold the ladder for you. We want it to be stable. We want you to be secure. It's one step at a time. We're gonna get you solid, stable, so you can start to climb your way out of this. So it's a ladder of servanthood, but how do they climb out? The ladder's name is values. Every time they learn and live another value, they climb another rung. My wonderful friend Nito Kibe, who was just an incredible leader himself, president of High Point University, Nito said, your present circumstances don't determine where you can go. They just merely determine where you start. We put the ladder where people start. We will find you wherever you are, hold the ladder for you as a servant, and let you climb the rungs of values of that ladder to pull yourself out of that place. So a ladder is the second picture. Waterfall, influence flows down, ladder, transformation goes up. The third picture is a heart. And just as a ladder is bottom up and a water flow is top down, a heart is inside out. A heart embraces the values. Transformation begins in the heart. Let me illustrate. I was invited a couple years ago by the King of Saudi Arabia to come to that country, that kingdom, because he was very interested in me teaching transformation and helping the country transform. If you watch the news, you know that the King of Saudi Arabia said by 2030 he wanted Saudi Arabia to be a transformed country. And so he, as a king would, put into laws, all the laws that would take place by 2030 for this kingdom to be transformed. So he invites me, and Mark Cole went with me, and I went for a weekend. It was a tremendous opportunity, and it was an amazing experience. And I spent the weekend with them, talking to them, what does transformation of a country look like? And I came to my last session on Sunday afternoon with the royal family and the top probably 150 leaders in Saudi Arabia from the 8 streams of influence. And I waited till my last session because I just wanted to connect and love and care and serve the people the way that I needed to before I really delivered the hard lesson. And the hard lesson in the last session was that you can't legalize transformation. That's a hard lesson in a kingdom. Just trust me. That you can't say by 2030, legally, through laws, we're going to be a transformed nation. The transformation doesn't begin on the outside, it begins on the inside. And I shared with them in that last session values. The values that they needed to learn and embrace and hold dear to their heart. And that if they were on the inside, through those values changed, the outside would take care of itself. Remember this, the outside always takes care of itself. We don't have an outside problem, folks. We've got an inside problem. When are we going to learn this? You can't pass enough laws in a society that doesn't have good values. They never will hold up. So in that last session, I went through every one of our values that we wanted to make sure that they taught, and it was life-changing. It was a life-changing experience. They embraced it in such an incredible way. In fact, afterwards, they asked if I could stay, even though my time officially was up, because they wanted to ask some more questions, and so we had a long 2.5-hour dinner. They just asked more questions, and then they began to ask us to start coming in and training, and they wanted to train within a year 20,000 people to do transformational tables, and it was an unbelievable experience. Now, here's the point. The heart. Transformation is an inside job. You've got to become bigger on the inside before you can become bigger on the outside. You've got to get better on the inside before you can get better on the outside. Transformation is all about values and heart. Gandhi said, your values become your destiny. How true it is. So I've given you 3 pictures so far of transformation. Waterfall, top down. Ladder, bottom up. Heart, inside out. The 4th picture is joined hands. Side by side. This is partnership. Transformation only happens when we can come alongside and join hands and partner with others. In my book, The 17 Laws of Teamwork, one of the laws is the law of Mount Everest. And the law of Mount Everest says, as the challenge escalates, the need for teamwork elevates. And transformation is a Mount Everest movement. And the only way that we're going to get to the top is if we understand that we do need each other, and we have to continually have partnerships. We have to continually come together to make it happen. Now, transformation, partnership is possible when we do the following things. I've got to do this very quickly, just right quickly. Okay, I'm going to take the word partner, P-A-R-T-N-E-R. You're going to love this. The letter P, place your agenda at the top of our agenda. We go in and we put their agenda at the top. For example, we share with them all the different values we teach, and then we say, pick the most important values to you. We want to teach your values first. What are the ones that you think your culture, your society, your country, your community needs? We place your agenda at the top of our agenda. The letter A is we add value to you on a continual basis. What I'm giving you now will work in any business. I am giving you now a total blueprint for how to partner with people successfully. Place your agenda above ours. Add value to you on a continual basis. The R, resource you. We're going to resource you with influence, ideas, values, tools. We walk into these places and we say, we have the resource for you. The letter T is we're going to tailor our work, our services to meet your needs. We're going to start where you are. We're going to start with the values that are important to you. This is not cookie cutter. The letter N is we're never going to violate the trust you have in us. The greatest violation in leadership is the violation of trust. And we never want to violate that. We want to be who we say we are. We want to do what we say we will do. The letter E in partner, we're going to exceed expectations in everything we do. We're not going to meet your expectations. We're going to exceed those expectations. We're going to do more than you ever thought that we would do. And the R, the last R in partner, is we're going to respect the relationship. We're going to respect the relationship and we're going to grow in it. I love that. So now we're getting our pictures. We're getting the picture of a waterfall, leadership, top down, a ladder, transformation, bottom up, a heart, values, inside out, joining hands, a partnership that works together. Let me give you another picture, a table. The fifth picture is a table. And the table, few to many. The table is what enables the growth of the movement. In fact, I call transformation tables a place where everyone helps everyone improve. So it starts with a few, a half a dozen people around the table, but that's where the interaction begins. Because at the transformation table, the three questions that are asked by every follower are answered automatically at the table. Those three questions: do you care for me? Can you help me? Can I trust you? It's in the interaction around the table with a few group people that you begin to see that dynamic, beautiful interaction begin to become contagious. There's one more picture. A bridge. A bridge takes you from here to there. A bridge leads you. It leads me to a better place. Sandra Day O'Connor, who was a Supreme Court judge for many, many years, most of you know the name. She wrote something I put in this chapter that I thought was just profound. I'm going to read it to you. If we focus our energies on sharing ideas, finding solutions, and using what is right with America to remedy what is wrong with it, we can make a difference. Our nation needs bridges, and bridges are built by those who look to the future and dedicate themselves to helping others. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. It's you. Now, I love poetry, but I don't read it well. And I want to read you a poem, but I want to tell you before I read it, I don't read poetry well. In fact, I contemplated not reading it, and then it was so good I said I have to read it. So I'm going to read it. And just understand. I don't read it well. But it's worth reading poorly because it's so good. It's called The Bridge Builder. An old man walking a lonesome road came at evening, cold and gray, into a chasm vast and wide and deep, with waters running cold and deep. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The rolling stream had no fears for him, but he turned when safe on the other side, and he built a bridge to span the tide. Old man said, a fellow traveler near, you're wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the passing day, and you never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at eventide? And the builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path that I have come, he said, there follows after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. The chasm, that's nothing to me, but to the fair-haired youth, it may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight, Jim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. The work I began, I will never see finished. It's longer than me and it's bigger than me. But transformation is building bridges. One of the most exciting things about the transformational movement is the material we've written for school-age children. We're finding it as life-changing in schools. And when we put it in schools, this isn't before school program or after school program. We don't let it in unless it's in the curriculum. The values in round tables, small tables with kids leading them, are taught alongside of math and language, science. It's not an afterthought. In fact, if it's going to be an afterthought, the school doesn't get it. And what's life-changing about it is that the kids lead those tables, because now they're practicing leadership, and that's how you develop leaders. So I'm going to close this session with a very moving video. In Guatemala now, we have 500,000 children who are learning values in school. It's been signed by the Department of Education that this is in the curriculum of fourth graders. And so we visited a school in Guatemala, talked to a principal, and this is the story. And as you watch it, remember, we're building a bridge for them.
I travel around the world.
Yo viajo a todo el mundo.
I speak to presidents,
Yo hablo a presidentes
large gatherings,
de grupos muy grandes,
but I've never spoken to anyone
pero nunca he hablado a alguien
that touched my heart more
que toca mi corazón tanto
than speaking to you today,
como estar hablando con ustedes hoy.
because you're the future of this country.
Porque son...
En la escuela se dan muchas familias que están desintegradas. Me refiero a que muchas familias o sus papás están divorciados o muchos papás han inmigrado al extranjero, o que tanto papá y mamá se van todo el día a trabajar y los niños viven solos en su casa. La verdad que a mí sí me afecta mucho. Lo conocimos, bueno, yo conocí el programa hace años cuando nos invitaron la primera vez que vino el doctor Maxwell a Guatemala. Empezamos a trabajar las mesas redondas. La primera vez, bueno, la segunda vez ya lo mirábamos, bueno, esto está como que nos trae algo diferente. Y mientras se fueron dando las mesas redondas cada semana con las que trabajábamos, íbamos viendo la transformación, no en las demás, sino mirábamos la transformación en nosotros mismos. Me regalaron una Biblia al salir de una reunión con el doctor Maxwell. La dejé en mi carro, la olvidé. Pero un día decidí traerla y ponerla en mi escritorio. Y no sé cómo empecé a hojearla y a ver qué era liderazgo. Me impactó en mi vida. Creo que fue sentir a Dios más presente en mi vida. Y creer que tengo un propósito, entender por qué soy maestra y por qué Dios me puso a dirigir esta escuela. Bueno, un cambio para mí importantísimo es la unión que se dio entre nosotros. Que hemos vuelto nuestra escuela a un hogar y los niños se dan cuenta de eso. Los alumnos ahorita están empezando a trabajar las mesas redondas y así como nosotros las maestras lo volvimos parte de nuestra vida, ellos también lo van a volver parte de su vida. Específicamente tengo un niño, él es un niño muy especial, también ha estado con nosotros desde primer grado.
El crecimiento requiere de tiempo, cualquier jardín sabe que no puede hacer crecer a la fuerza a las plantas, en otras palabras, pues avanza en tu crecimiento personal cada día, pero no verás resultados tan rápido. Debes de tener paciencia para ver los resultados, como hacer jardinero. Con las plantas debes quitar lo malo y sembrar lo bueno todos los días. ¿Quieres ser maestro?
Yo sueño para que los niños buscaran un camino mejor y que soñaran en grande. Es un cambio que se va a dar, que lo vamos a ver de aquí a unos 10 años, ya vamos a estar viendo el cambio. Con un alumno que se va a sentir empoderado, que se va a sentir seguro de sí mismo, que va a sentir que debe de ayudar a hacer ese cambio dentro del país, que lo está haciendo primero en su persona y luego en su sociedad. Cuando nosotros nos sintamos parte de esa transformación y sintamos que somos parte de este país, vamos a hacer el cambio. No podemos dejarle la decisión a alguien más. Somos cada uno los que vamos poniendo ese granito de arena para poder hacer una gran montaña. Y esa montaña es nuestro país.